have some interesting Martin guitars here. 12 fret 1912 0028 Martin, 1930 Martin OM28, 1934 Martin 0028, and here is a 1938 Martin D18. Martin's early guitars all had 12 fret necks with a choice of slotted peg head with geared tuners or solid peg head, and the early ones with friction pegs. These are Ivory friction pegs, genuine solid ivory. In fact, on this guitar, as is typical of any Martin guitar prior to 1918, whatever was white was real ivory. After 1918 onward, they used celluloid imitation ivory for the bindings and also for tuner buttons, but they still continued to use elephant ivory saddles and nuts up until about 1970. But this guitar has ivory for bridge pins, saddle, bindings, heel cap, and tuners, and nut. So real ivory and real Brazilian rosewood, both of which, Brazilian rosewood and ivory, are on Appendix 1 of the CITES Treaty, Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. Not legal to harvest anymore, and not legal to ship without special pre-CITES exemption certificates for the rosewood, but getting a pre-CITES exemption certificate to import or export ivory is no longer possible at all, regardless of the age. So this guitar would no longer be legal for import or export, but still is legal to deal within the USA. But even there are new restrictions where musical instruments have an exemption for interstate commerce if they have no more than 200 grams of ivory. More than that, they're not even legal for interstate commerce, and there are regulations now about ivory such that at least by next year we anticipate that it will no longer be legal to ship ivory statues or artworks that are primarily ivory. Won't be legal even interstate. So this is a serious issue, and some states such as New Jersey have made it a total ban on any amount of ivory for commerce, even within the state. But at any rate, historically, this is an interesting guitar. This is a 000 size, which was Martin's biggest in 1912. The 000 was introduced in 1905. During the 1850s, Martin made guitars size 1 through 5, with 5 being the smallest and 1 being the biggest. And then when they decided they wanted to make a bigger guitar, where did they go? They went O or 0. And then later 00. And then later, as of 1905, 000. So this was their big guitar, but still designed for gut strings, the friction pegs. But this is an interesting beast because later, when Martin decided in late 29 that they wanted to do 14 fret models, what they did is effectively, they not only made a longer neck, but they just lopped off the body here and had a slightly different bodied shape, as one can see here. These guitars are the same body width, 15 inches. They are both style 28, herringbone top trim, Adirondack spruce tops, Brazilian rosewood back and sides. This has a Spanish cedar neck. This has a mahogany neck. Martin made necks out of Spanish cedar up until until 1918, so 1917 on back, they had Spanish cedar necks. Interestingly enough, Spanish cedar is neither Spanish nor cedar. It's a Brazilian wood, related more to mahogany, but it was used by the Spaniards for guitar necks and has a somewhat cedar-like smell to it. But this is a historically very interesting guitar, and is the predecessor of this model, the OM28, which was Martin's first 14-fret model. This guitar was made in 1930, but the first OMs were introduced in late 29. Note it has the solid peg head similar to what Martin used previously with friction pegs, but this has geared banjo pegs and is designed as a steel string guitar. So this is designed as a steel string guitar rather than a gut string guitar, and has the more modern belly bridge, which is one of the first with that feature, and has a pick guard, a bit smaller than the later type pick guard. The bigger guard came out in late 31, but this is the original OM style guard. This guitar shows moderate wear, but it is a historically very significant instrument and a very fine sounding instrument. Sound is a subjective thing that is difficult to measure with precision, but this is certainly a good sounding guitar. Let's see if it's in tune. A good sounding guitar. The OM models, orchestra model is what they were calling it for OM, proved to be a very successful, popular design, such that by 34 they changed the O to have the OM specs, dropped the OM designation, and called it an OM. And it's the 0028 instead of an OM28. This one is late 34, late enough that it has modern style frets rather than the earlier bar frets. And this has the 24.9-inch scale, which Martin settled on for O's, whereas the OM has the longer scale that the 12-fret O had. It's a 25.4-inch scale, but this is still a very similar looking guitar to the OM28, although it does have the right angle tuners, which were not available until 1930. And this has inlay from 5th fret to the 15th fret, where you'll note this has inlay only from the 7th, 9th, and 5, 7, and 9, 5th fret, 7th fret, and 9th fret. But essentially this is still a very similar guitar to the OM, and it's still a very good sounding instrument. D18, made 1938. This is a mahogany, back, sides, and neck, Adirondack spruce top, Brazilian rosewood peghead veneer, ebony fingerboard, and bridge. This guitar originally would have had a high X scalloped bracing pattern with the X would cross right about here. This one is further down. What this tells us is something suspicious here. When we examine this guitar with careful inspection, we can tell this one was sent back to Martin, probably for warranty work, in the later 30s, and has a replacement top done by Martin with the later lower X bracing pattern where the X crosses right about here. It's still a very good guitar, but not fully original. Every guitar we get, we have to do the complete forensic exam when we take it in to study it. An instrument can still be a very good guitar and have been modified or repaired, but for a collector, the value is going to be reduced. And this guitar marked at $23,500 seems like it's still a lot of money, but a clean, fully original 1938 can easily bring $50,000, which this is not. It's still a plenty fine guitar, and it still is a pre-World War II top.